And we're live. Finally. No. How do I do that? Oh. Mm-hmm. Including the fact that I haven't made the announcement for the livecast yet. Yes. I needed to go live in order to get the broadcast link because, hold on, you aren't here yet. Nobody's here yet. Slow down. Oh my god. What's the best way to get it? You haven't used YouTube for live streaming in so long. Yes, I understand that. I'm not going to read out. What? Yes, but I also just realized that I don't think your Discord audio is coming in on the live stream at all. So I've just been talking to myself. No one's going to know what I'm reacting to. Hold on. Give me properties. No, you need to be that. Try.
Try.
Yay!
Trigun, the anime, the 90s anime.
Holy crap, you're loud.
Actually, I think it was more 2000.
Turn
Was I just talking too loud?
No, it's just the way the settings were. You went into the red almost immediately.
Oh. I was very excited about Trigun, the original anime.
Yeah.
Which has nothing to do with conspiracy theories.
Why is the bit rate low?
Why is the bit rate low?
Oh, I think I know why. Give me... You stop. Stop.
You stop.
There, now it's better.
Now it's better? It's better now?
6,800. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. So that's a bit of a warning. We're good. Go away. I need to set that different. And then I need to get the link. Now that you can actually be heard.
Yay.
Really? You have to make
I like this. I like the audio, actually. I just... Sometimes I like to reply to sounds.
How do I get the link? Give me the link. Yes?
Give him the link.
There we go.
That's right.
What?
I was like, give him the link, and then you're like, there we go.
Now I just need to send this to myself. So. And we're going to announce soon. What does the bit rate matter? It's just a static image. Goodness gracious. This is the other reason why I like Twitch. It isn't as naggy. Anyways, I'm gonna stop ranting about things I don't like. Because we gotta rant about other things.
Soon we will be heard by millions of electrons.
Okay, we are now posted.
We are now posted.
And you can now be heard.
I can now be heard. When are we starting?
We can start at any time now.
We can start at any time. um So, this is the Bad Occult podcast. I am Felix Warren, one of your hosts, and talking to me is Shadow, the other host.
Yes.
And the way we do it is it's always exactly this awkward.
Yes.
All the time.
And then we edit it to make it less awkward.
Yes. So the idea is that on this podcast, it'll mostly be me kind of driving the conversation about a topic of occult interest, and us basically sharing our point of view on it.
Yeah.
And sometimes there will be things that Shadow knows that I don't know, and he can tell me about, and other times will be the other way around, and sometimes we'll just have opinions.
And crazy thing is, sometimes our opinions are going to differ.
Yeah. That's actually one of the more interesting things. So, Shadow and I are married, so don't worry about us getting into arguments or anything. We'll work it out. And we're located in the Portland, Oregon area. And I think that's pretty much like
Ooh.
At some point we'll have an introduction that says this in a good way.
Yes. I do want to mention, because we are in the Portland, Oregon area, I think this dovetails into our more general conspiracy theory topics. But like, what have you been thinking about the geomagnetic storm that's going on right now? Like the auroras. I was a little bit disappointed yesterday that it didn't look too good.
So, I don't really have a lot of opinions on geomagnetic storms yet.
Cool.
Other than... What's that?
I said, cool.
Other than, like, they can affect equipment. I think that they can probably affect consciousness, especially if you like look into astrology, they're going to have some effect on astrology to some degree. It's That's just kind of how those influences work.
Hmm.
But like how much effect it really is going to have on our lives, I have no idea, and it's not something that I've been like prepping my basement for, which I don't have.
Yeah, our non-existent prepper basement.
Yeah, our house doesn't have a basement, so uh can't do that one.
Nope.
So, yeah, this episode is going to be on conspiracy theories, and I really want to talk about um kind of the history of conspiracy theories, what content usually ends up in conspiracy theories and why, and kind of give some advice on researching and thinking about conspiracy theories.
Hmm.
Um it's a topic that I've always been interested in since I was like a kid. I got interested in UFOs, and the first thing that you find out about after you find out what UFOs are is that there's got to be a government cover up.
Hmm.
Like you can literally read that in a newspaper, like from the last month, a mainstream newspaper. You will be able to find an article somewhere about UFO cover ups in the government. And I'm not saying that it's actually happening, but I am saying that like it's a pretty mainstream news topic at this point.
Right.
So like um once you find out as a kid that there might be a government cover up of a topic, it's like, "Oh my gosh, what else could be happening?" Um Now the thing is, when I was a kid, it was the 80s, and so um what kind of conspiracy theories is often a case of like when you find out about conspiracy theories, like because there's a bunch of conspiracy theories that I've just like never heard of, and uh like are completely exclusive to sort of modern experience. And also like there's there's conspiracy theories that were pretty dominant amongst people who talk about this sort of thing
Hmm.
during certain time periods that no longer are even really touched upon because, like, after Ruby Ridge happened,
Hmm.
like, everybody's going to be talking about Ruby Ridge. Um, and, like, I'm not going to get into the meat and bones of what Ruby Ridge is. It's got its own Wikipedia page. Um, And like so after something like that happened, after like, Waco happened with David Koresh
Hmm.
and his cult, um like that completely changed how people who are interested in conspiracy theories were discussing things, because suddenly it's like, well, this looks like it's really happening. What if it's happening everywhere? And it kind of completely consumed the space.
Hmm.
Um so recently, conspiracy theories have been a really icky place for me to explore on the internet.
Yes.
And I say recently, but really ever since 9/11, um, conspiracy theory discussion got extremely anti-Semitic extremely fast.
Now,
And it's not that it wasn't anti-Semitic before,
hmm
but it got really anti-Semitic.
now this is something that's really interesting that is different between me and you, Felix, because I was like a preteen when 9/11 happened.
Yeah, and I was in undergraduate college.
Right. So, I wasn't really in online spaces to see the difference. So, like, the conspiracy theories that I have seen have all sort of had that post 9/11 flavor. I guess I don't know how else to call it.
Oh yeah, definitely. 9/11, I think, is the biggest example of an event changing, like, definitely a community space, but specifically in terms of conspiracy discussion and conspiracy theory discussion, because there are actual conspiracies that have happened. A very famous one that everyone talks about a lot is Julius Caesar's murder.
Mm-hmm.
That's an actual conspiracy that did happen.
Yeah.
um and it's a lot of times whenever people discuss conspiracies, they automatically add theory to it. And the problem is that there are actual conspiracies that have happened,
Mm-hmm.
um that can be discussed, and they if you mix both conspiracy and conspiracy theory discussion, then you basically can staple something that really happened onto something that's
Yeah.
just speculation.
Yeah.
Like people can cite Ruby Ridge and suddenly anything's real.
Right. Now, I'm really glad that you're bringing up the definition between conspiracy and conspiracy theory, because I feel like there is a very important distinction to be made there.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the definition of conspiracy, and it's really funny because I will never forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I went to a boarding school for high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and while I was at that boarding school, hold on. I'm kind of noticing that my mic's picking up.
On mine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can adjust the sensitivity. This is why it's a live cast.
Yeah, I don't want to waste too much audio
Dealing with that.
while like that.
Yep. I just heard a weird beep.
I might have bumped the microphone.
Okay. All right.
I actually did, so
Okay. So, looks like I'm picking up on you less now.
great. You kind of talk while I'm talking so I can
Yeah.
hear that. I'm gonna
Let's
keep
go ahead and
talking
keep talking.
and keep talking.
Da 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 da
It's a
da da
great
da da
audio.
da
Da,
da
da,
da.
da. All right, I think we're good.
Cool. Yeah.
Gosh, that was just so great. So I will loop back to where I was, I remember. Definition of conspiracy. Uh, so boarding high school where I went, made a rule against conspiring with each other, uh,
What?
to conspiring with each other to break the rules. Um, and there was an actual assembly where one of the administration explained this to us, and he explained to us that the word conspiracy comes from the Latin conspirare, which means to breathe together.
Ew.
So con means with, and spirare from respiration, to breathe together.
Uh,
Um and so basically if you were in the room while someone was planning to break the rules and you didn't tell an authority figure about it, you were guilty of conspiring to break the rules.
uh,
So from then on, we basically agreed that anytime that we were planning something, everybody needed to hold their breath. But conspirare means to breathe together. Um, it comes from Latin because, I mean, the first conspiracy was um, the basically, I think it was like 12 senators
yeah.
um, who all basically agreed, like, hey, we're all going to bring knives to go meet Julius Caesar, and we're all going to stab him, so we'll all be guilty of it together.
Right.
Um, and so, like, the breathing together part basically means that the reason they're all considered equally guilty of this conspiring thing is because if one of them who was there had gone and told someone about this ahead of time, then it wouldn't have happened.
Mm-hmm.
So even like hearing about the gang getting together to murder Julius Caesar, and not telling anybody about it makes you guilty of conspiracy in that Roman flavor sense.
Right.
And so, like,
So, hold on. Hold on.
it's very rules lawyering in a way. Go ahead.
This was an assembly at your high school.
Yeah.
What were people conspiring to do?
I think it was. I don't really know if there was any one thing that had happened, but basically, we lived in dormitories and people were sneaking out to like go make out and stuff.
Oh no.
Um, and so the thing is, the way that the living quarters were designed, it would kind of be really hard to sneak out without someone noticing you sneaking out. So
But,
I think that they were
so,
saying the people who noticed you sneak out would be guilty of conspiracy to
but,
to sneak out.
but they were making it sound like you guys were, like, plotting to overthrow the like, school. A la, like,
I know
kill a kill.
this was a lot of fun to discuss right after the assembly happened. Oh, you bet.
Like, what?
It was a high school for very smart people too. So like, all of us were like thinking about the Orwellian implications of this. Anyway, I don't want to get too deep in the roots
No,
of
I just
of
had
all of
to.
that,
Yeah, had to take a moment.
but that's how like I just know down to the bones what conspiracy means.
Wow.
I was explained to me in a high school auditorium.
Oh my
Um
goodness.
and we all had to understand the rules because the rules book was being updated. It's very important.
Yes.
So
Yes.
conspiracy theories, you would think that a conspiracy theory is just a theory about a conspiracy, but typically conspiracy theories wind into a kind of speculation that sort of feeds upon itself.
Mm-hmm.
um I'd say a good typical conspiracy theory where you can either stay normal or go down the rabbit hole is the JFK assassination conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because there's a lot of data there. There's a lot of information. There's definitely some studies that point to the fact that like there probably was a conspiracy to do something. And it definitely resulted in JFK being dead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like but who done it is still unanswered.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big division in the conspiracy theory discussion community, re JFK. Like, who you think killed JFK is probably tied into what you think about some other conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
And like quite a lot of times, whenever you hear some more crackpot based discussion, someone will usually tie in JFK's death to it somehow, even though it should be completely unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
um like Ted um the rumor that Ted Cruz's father shot JFK, um that was a something that was basically spread as political poison against Ted Cruz running for president.
Mm-hmm.
um and it's ridiculous. It would be ridiculous to think to just sort of say that unless there was already like occasion to connect stuff to JFK's like murder conspiracy.
Right.
And it happens all the time. Like someone's got to connect the Illuminati to the mafia to JFK, um to the CIA, and eventually it's going to involve numbers stations, um and a space laser of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow Jewish people will be invoked.
Yeah.
And so like I as a kid and then as a teen, learning about this space, like JFK came out whenever I was 11 and I saw the second half of it in the theater,
Mm-hmm.
um waiting for someone's mom to be finished watching it so we could all go home. And so I researched stuff around that time, and it was an interesting time to be researching conspiracy stuff because 1993 is when a bunch of people wrote to Congress about the JFK classification stuff, and Congress actually passed an act to declassify the JFK materials, and they're still doing that now. They're still declassifying the materials. We still haven't gotten all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was watching that history be made, and so like I knew that was a real thing that was happening, that Congress actually passed a law about. And like, so, you know, that stuff is very factual. Um, but bringing in stuff like the Illuminati takes it into a more fantasy land.
Mm-hmm.
And so conspiracy theories, there's some people who are interested in the nuts and bolts of like who killed JFK, who shot JR. And then there's some people who are really just more wrapped up in the fantasy
Mm-hmm.
of it, who just want to hear more and more fantastical things.
Right.
And it gets I once was looking for the more fantastical things. I was like, okay, what's the craziest conspiracy theory out there that there could possibly be? And I was soon finding that to find that out, I was going to have to read a lot of very awkward stuff about Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of anti-Semitic material in a lot of conspiracy theories, and it just gets so casually invoked. With no real explanation, and like it makes the space very weird to be in.
Mm-hmm.
I find that post 9/11 it was a lot more that way. The in quotations Jews did 9/11 um sort of theory slash meme just kind of engulfed the conspiracy theory space,
Mm.
and I pretty much just left it.
Yeah.
Like, after that, I just kind of researched very specific things. Like, if I wanted to know more about what was going on with uh, the the unsolved JFK murder mystery, then I'd just go look that up or wait for news to come up, which it still does.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then I wouldn't really have to worry about the absolute poison that I was considering the community to become. But like, it it's very concerning that the the conspiracy theory space is so easily anti-Semitic, so easily
Mm-hmm.
racist, that they pretty much just accept whatever is stated if it's on the way to talking about another conspiracy theory.
Right.
um it like and if you propose to filter anything, then of course you're supporting government censorship, which is there's a lot of big conspiracy theories about.
Mm-hmm. So, um, how about like I think we've defined what a conspiracy theory like is shaped like when you look for it today, but
Yeah.
um I'd like to know like present to me a conspiracy theory, I guess. And um present it in the like what I'm trying to say is like I've never had a researched a conspiracy theory that does not have these like undertones. So
Right.
I'm having a hard time picturing a conspiracy theory that doesn't look like that. So,
Okay, so I could actually talk about UFOs slash UAPs, um, and that will actually fulfill that pretty nicely.
mhm. So yeah, let's get a conspiracy theory pre 9/11 example.
Definitely pre 9/11. So I'm gonna give you the distinction right off. I am not gonna try to recollect dates
Mhm.
specifically. Um, if you want to know what happened in Roswell, New Mexico, involving possible discovery of UFOs, there's a Wikipedia article on that.
Hmm.
I'm gonna like. There's a Wikipedia article on all of these. Actually, the more discussed a conspiracy theory it is, the more likely there is a Wikipedia article that people are constantly linking to clarify each other on what is actually real.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually makes it kind of convenient to look up. But anyway, um, so the reason why there is a conspiracy theory or 3000 about the US government hiding the existence of UFOs is because in the 60s, it's either in the 60s or it's in the 50s, but I'm pretty sure it's the 60s. Um, but it's the. You know what? I can look it up. Stop wimping out and just look it up. Roswell crash site. The Roswell incident. Oh, it's a 1947. Um, so the official statement is that it was an Air Force um balloon,
Mm.
not necessarily a weather balloon because it was actually being used for military purposes. But there was a balloon that crashed near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a real thing that happened. Um, and the big discussion is over whether it was really a balloon.
Mm-hmm.
And also a bunch of other stuff. So, an actual civilian found the wreckage of whatever it is that crashed near Roswell, New Mexico. And that civilian ended up with radiation burns, and radiation like side effects
Mm-hmm.
on his hands for quite a while.
Yeah.
So whatever it was that crashed was highly irradiated to where if you like touched the wreckage, then you would get radiation burns on your hands just from touching it for a bit.
Right. And
Like this guy's fingers were swollen up.
now,
I've seen the photos.
one thing that I want to bring up right away is the fact that, like, um, we've had a series like Chernobyl, that's come out since then. And, like, as you're describing this, I am seeing the images of the, firefighters who started trying to pick up the graphene.
Yeah, it was very similar to the firefighters who were picking up the graphite from the exploded reactor at Chernobyl.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they were dropping it because it was hot. I don't know if this was hot to the touch for the guy, but I do know that he got radiation exposure burns, and also other effects that like I followed him in life. Um, so the thing is, the official story is that it was a crashed Air Force balloon. The thing is, you can use a balloon to like test out a nuclear bomb.
Mm-hmm.
It's in New Mexico. It's near Air Force testing sites, and this is around whenever they're testing a lot of secret, often nuclear powered or nuclear involved devices. Um, and like some of these, if there's not something that leaks or a reason to declassify things, some things just stay classified.
Right.
So a lot of people uh, connect Roswell and the Roswell incident with UFOs because they think, okay, what if that was a crashed UFO and the government, like, cleaned up the crash site and stuff and is disavowing knowledge of UFOs and stuff, and the radiation exposure was from the UFO device, or what if it was government trying to replicate
Mm-hmm.
UFO hardware, and that's why blah blah blah. And the thing is, like, knowing what I know now about nuclear testing and like military nuclear stuff, I know that if it's military nuclear stuff, it's automatically extremely classified.
Mm-hmm.
And that is enough to get it covered up real tight. And it doesn't matter if somebody says, "Hey, is that a UAP? We need to know if there are UFOs here." They're just not going to talk about nuclear stuff.
Right.
And like that's an interesting conundrum to me because like it actually has exacerbated the amount of uh belief that there is a government conspiracy to cover something up.
Yeah.
uh I I feel that nuclear secrecy, especially in the Cold War era, really amped up the amount of paranoia that people feel about this, because nuclear secrecy itself was extremely paranoidly
Yes.
instituted.
Yes.
I mean,
Um,
it was just the age of paranoia.
and like my experience with nuclear is probably kind of unique in that I have family that have worked in nuclear power plants, so I
Yeah.
have a lot more casual exposure to it, so it doesn't seem scary to me. But knowing that most people have that sort of like scary um, uh, outlook on it.
Well, and the thing is, like, anytime that there's stories about these test sites or crashes that civilians happen to spot or encounter, there's like a lot of, I would say, scare tactics to keep them from finding out too much that I think might sensationalize the nuclear stuff more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I'd say that like sometimes they say the crime is the cover up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and with conspiracy theories and conspiracies themselves, a lot of times it's the cover up that is talked about, because to conspire together means to act with others to hide something.
Mm-hmm.
So there's usually some discussion of a cover up or a secret being kept because something is being hidden either until it's done or just being hidden because they don't want to be found out.
Right.
Um, an actual conspiracy that happened involving several banks doing a lot of money laundering in Italy. It's called the P2 conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it happened around the 70s or 80s. Um, and it's actually why there's a lot of laws that have been passed involving international financial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like in around that time period.
Gotcha.
And I mean, when you've got conspiracies involving financial stuff, I mean, like insider trading would be a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you say conspiracy, it doesn't really illustrate what it is that people are doing. They are in secret manipulating the worth of something, or what people's perception is of the worth of something, so that they can make money off of a deal before everybody finds out what the actual worth of something is.
Right.
That's the incentive to conspire right there.
Mm-hmm.
Usually conspiring, it's not that people are like, "Man, I'm going to conspire today. I'm going to go out with my collaborators in secret and we're going to hatch a scheme." Like, people don't really set out to conspire. They do it along the way to do something else or to
Mm-hmm.
make some sort of gain.
I mean, so let's talk about something that can be classified as a conspiracy, but I've never thought of it that way before. Um, Wells Fargo infamously had a program where tellers and other workers in the bank were being highly pressured to produce more new accounts, upgraded accounts, things like that that were actually physically possible based on the actual like movement numbers of the bank. And so they were pressured to create like fraudulent accounts and stuff like that. And like none of them came together to be like, ooh, this is how we're going to do it. So I don't think that would count as a conspiracy because they're not actually conspiring together, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
So the conspiracy theory space would still talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
but they would largely talk about it based on like what they think the head honchos at the top would be doing. I mean, you've seen Reddit discuss this.
Right.
On Superstonk, they talk about this stuff all the time, and there
Right.
are some conspiracy theories that float around there. So I'd say that's a good example. Now, what I do want to say though is what you're describing sounds like Rico.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so this is where the space gets interesting in terms of discussion because when talking about conspiracy theories, you're really just talking about like a story, like this is something that may have happened or something that did happen that involved people, keeping things secret. It's kind of an espionage story.
Mm-hmm.
But if you talk about the actual law and criminal law,
Yeah.
it would be RICO, which is racketeering, um, racketeering. I don't remember what the I is for. Um, and criminal organizations is the CO part.
Hmm.
And so the conspiring thing is often called like criminal organizations or racketeering if
Rack.
you're trying to pressure people.
Here we go. Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act.
There you go. Yeah, so influenced that kind of so RICO charges are usually how they take things up against like mob influenced
Mm-hmm.
organizations, and
So,
also whenever anybody's doing any kind of corrupt kind of money handling on a large scale, RICO charges tend to come into play.
so, um, Rico, I guess, would probably take the um crime up a level to like management for in our Wells Fargo example because um obviously these people are acting individually of each other and actually trying to conceal their own things because what they're doing is illegal, but it's all done under this like umbrella of pressure from management to do something that is technically not possible.
I do recall that Wells Fargo was like I believe that there was some sort of settlement they made with the
Yes.
US government. So
Yes.
usually what happens is that an organization like this will settle with the government instead of actually being charged with something.
Yes. Yes.
So that is actual justice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like getting into like I think sort of sideways,
Yeah.
um conspiracy theory that there is actually a movie about,
Mm-hmm.
um and what's great is that I'm gonna forget what the movie's called. Um, let me let me look that up for just a second. It was in the 90s, and so I don't think you're gonna remember it.
mm.
Um, 90s action. What do we call that? An action movie, thriller, suspense. Oh man, Chain Reaction. Okay, there we go. Um, Keanu Reeves is in it.
Ah.
So, in Chain Reaction, basically, the protagonists come up with a way to fuel a car with water
Mm-hmm.
to make it very, very brief. And what happens is that the device that they make for that ends up being like made into like an explosive device instead through some sort of
Okay.
sabotage.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, one thing that comes up in the plot is the idea that all of this time, the reason why we don't have like hydrogen powered cars or a hydrogen engine or clean power is because the oil industry and the Department of Energy have been sabotaging clean energy research. And so part of it is the protagonist trying to like flee from that sabotage
Mm-hmm.
by an industry that wants to keep clean power from happening.
Right.
Uh, like, um, and there are a lot of people who believe that, like, someone's already figured out hydrogen powered cars, but like they're basically every time that the ability comes to come out with this, like the already existing power industries basically make find a way to make it not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so the conspiracy theory there, I mean, there's lots of different versions of it. It depends on which industry you don't like.
Right.
That's who you blame it on. um and the thing is, like, some of it has a lot of basis in truth. If you look at the lobbying space for energy, you'll find that there's a lot of clean energy stuff that doesn't get passed because of, for instance, the fossil fuel industry lobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in terms of an actual could draw a line from this executive saying something to this person getting paid to do this to this law getting passed in this way, we've never had that actually there.
Mm-hmm.
um it's like you have a lot of conspiracy theories, but proof of conspiracy is not nearly um so abundant.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to get to sort of how to think about conspiracy theories because
Mm-hmm.
I tried to sort of lead with that, and I've mostly just talked about, I think, just how treacherous a space it can be to try to think in.
Yeah.
And it's actually something I've thought about for a long time because I've noticed that people in the conspiracy theory space tend to be very on edge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and a lot of the conclusions that they make often are either very self-serving or very paranoid.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the things that I've just found out about the human brain kind of explain some of that.
Right.
Um, and some of it I can't really blame people for because, like, I've found out about actual things that, like, actual reality of nuclear waste and
Mm-hmm.
the fallout from nuclear testing. It's existentially terrifying.
Yeah.
At the same time, I can actually understand why people are using nuclear reactors right now and why we can't just shut them down immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good place to start when it comes to how to think about conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to kind of not really both sides things, but definitely look at them from several different angles at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best way to consider it is think about the conspiracy theory from the point of view of, like, does this seem like it's just a way to get to the end point of the conspiracy theory?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does this theory seem like it was made up in reverse?
Right.
um, or is it something that someone actually noticed happened?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I think that a lot of conspiracy theories that imply that this ethnic group or this racial group is the reason why all of these bad things happened.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like a very specific theory. Like, you'll often notice that the ethnic group is tacked on in a way that that doesn't logically work.
Right.
So, um, we're about to take a break. I'm going to try to wrap this up a little bit.
Cool.
Um, so like on the one hand, it's like kind of like, is this theory shaped like the results that the author wants? Is this theory like, for instance, the theory that the mafia did the JFK assassination?
Mm-hmm.
Um, sorry, the cat has been standing on my remote keyboard to try to make me go away.
Oh no.
Um, like the theory that the mafia did the JFK assassination, it is often at odds with some of the evidence. And
Right.
so if somebody has a theory that the mafia did it, often they'll just like not mention the evidence that conflicts with their theory.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a theory about what happened with the JFK assassination, where someone just reviews all of the evidence and then considers like what would be most likely with the knowledge of all of this evidence,
Mm-hmm.
um, it tends to be a bit different. It's less cherry picked,
Right.
and it tends to be that they come to their conclusion of how they think, who they think done it. They tend to get to that via their analysis of all of the data, from a less biased point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, their conclusion is not prejudged.
Right.
um,
Yeah, they don't work from
so
the conclusion that they want to find and cherry pick the evidence backwards.
yeah, basically. That backwards kind of writing and that backwards kind of thinking is quite prevalent in the conspiracy theory space. And uh, it's why I peck at the space sometimes, but I don't stay there very long. It's
Yeah.
not a very fun direction to think in.
Right. All right. So, we're gonna go ahead and take a break. I've got the transition this. There we go. And we will be back soon. We are back.
Welcome back to Badness.
Yes.
So, we've never really explained why it's bad, but basically, Bad Occult Advice was the original blog that I did, and Bad Occult Podcast is a good name.
Yes.
Yep, that's it.
That's it.
That's it. So, I want to get to the brain stuff behind conspiracy theories.
Yes.
I misplaced something, and it's making it difficult for me to do my whole thing.
Oh no.
This is the stuff that you miss if you just get the podcast version. Where did it? Oh, there it is.
You miss the random moments.
All right, I am prepared now. So, um, part of the importance behind figuring out how to think about conspiracy theories, especially whenever you're reading them and processing them, is that conspiratorial thinking typically comes from a different part of the brain than the part of the brain that decides what's a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, the part of the brain that is basically aware of the fact that it is a brain that is thinking and is able to direct thought and make decisions purposefully is the forebrain. The
Mm-hmm.
the the prefrontal cortex is the proper name, but basically the forehead part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and basically in the center of that is where your focus and awareness really is, and it's the ability to steer, like to choose to think about something or not think about something.
Right.
And so since that's where the ability comes from, if your thoughts are focused in a different part of your brain than that area, you don't necessarily have the ability to steer your own thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So, in more towards the middle of the brain, further back, is the amygdala. And it's actually like an almond shaped piece of the brain on the left and on the right.
Mm.
And they're in different lobes and they work together at the same time, but they're not connected.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your prefrontal cortex, your forebrain, actually is physically connected at one point.
Oh.
So the amygdala is responsible for more um uh reactive type of stuff. It's specifically where uh reactions come from. It's what's supposed to take over if you recognize a predator is in the area and you're supposed to run.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, prejudice literally comes from the amygdala because the amygdala is supposed to make a decision faster than you can think so that you can save your life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if you are kind of in your amygdala more than your forebrain when you're experiencing something, the memory that is made is really colored by being from the amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot more. I'd say you could have a very traumatic memory be formed by the amygdala,
Right.
because it it activates your avoiding harm system.
Mm-hmm.
And the avoiding harm system is the bug out bag of the brain. Um, it'll do whatever it takes without you really having time to decide whether that was truly the best idea or not.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's kind of like the bullet time of the brain.
Oh. Gotcha. I've never
So
thought
your
of it
brain's
that way.
trying to have your brain's trying to have regular thoughts and do things to help you do stuff, But the amygdala is like, no, I'm Neo, and I could go faster than anyone.
Right?
And all of the Agent Smiths in your prefrontal cortex are like, I was just trying to get a snack. So, the amygdala is responsible for some very important things, and it's wired in a way that it will automatically do stuff, and that's just how it is.
Mhm.
Um, and so, whenever some people are reading conspiracy theories or engaged in conspiracy theory discussion, um, they seem to be having the experience inside their amygdala instead of inside their prefrontal cortex.
Mhm.
And so a lot of it is paranoia focused because like the theories are being discussed in a mindset that literally creates paranoia. Paranoia, in fact, is para, both, noia, knowing slash knowledge. So
Mm.
it's like knowing two things at the same time.
Mhm.
The amygdala is two different parts thinking at the same time. And so if they can kind of get in a feedback loop
Right.
with each other, um, where one is like, "Oh my gosh, there's some shadows outside. That's right, and we're in a tent. Yeah, there could be bears. Oh my gosh, it's a bear. If it's a bear, then like."
Yeah.
And so the shadows, you don't really know what the shadows are, but the amygdala between the two sides of itself has already decided that you need to watch out for the bear that you know is there
Yes.
because the amygdala knows that the bear is there. The prefrontal cortex could probably figure out pretty fast that the bear is not there,
Mhm.
but the amygdala is much faster than the prefrontal cortex. So
Right.
the thing about the amygdala is it's actually really fun to be in that mindset in some ways. One is just like the fantasy story nature of conspiracy theories often pulls you in with very complex characters and situations and
Mhm.
twists and turns. Um and like, someone might instead just read an actual fantasy story to get that sort of need satisfied. But is also like the amygdala is allowed to tap into your adrenaline in ways that the rest of your brain isn't,
Mhm.
because the amygdala needs to get you to run real fast away from the real threat that definitely exists. It definitely knows this.
Mhm.
Don't listen to the amygdala, it doesn't know that. And so you get a lot of chemicals that are released from these types of discussions and these types of mindsets that themselves can be very addictive. Like the
Mhm.
reason why cocaine is so addictive is because cocaine releases like endorphins that like it at a rate that can't normally be released.
Right.
um, and it actually runs you out of some of those endorphins because of the imbalance in how it helps those release too
Mm.
quickly. So the amygdala is like it's got its own supply of cocaine.
Oh.
It's really, I mean, the 80s and all of the films that all of the directors who are on cocaine produced really show how much fun it is to be on cocaine.
Mhm.
Um, and so the amygdala can be kind of an addictive place to be.
Mhm.
I find that video games are an interesting outlet for it. Like, for instance, the Five Nights at Freddy's and other types of horror games that involve jump scares or involve you focusing
Yeah.
very, very, like on a lot of different types of input at once and reacting extremely fast to them in a very specific way. Um, that's amygdala driven activity.
Mhm.
And it can be fun to be in that state, and video games allow you to enter that state and then exit that state in a
Mhm.
pretty orderly fashion. Conspiracy theory discussion doesn't really have, I think, a very good exit point or winding down point, because a lot of the discussion areas, like the communities, the groups, or whatever, the news channels, they're focused on addictive content to keep people watching. They want to up the watch hours and up the ad exposure. That's
Mm-hmm.
how they make money, is by ad exposure.
Gotcha.
So they don't want you to have an exit point. They want you to keep on listening to the next conspiracy, watching the next feed.
Mm-hmm.
They always want more content to give, and they don't really care about how honest it is.
Right.
So, um, I want to talk next about where this all comes from, but before that, I want to slow down and say, do you have anything to say or ask?
Um, so it really makes sense that certain people would be more addicted to like conspiracy theories. Like um for people who don't have a lot of adrenaline inducing experiences in their life.
Yeah,
As someone as a highly anxious person in general, it's very hard for me to be swept up in the conspiracy theory because I have
you need a break.
I'm like I don't want more adrenaline. Also, since I'm not thinking with my adrenaline fueled brain, I could be like, wait a minute, here's some logical fallacies and start picking the threads apart. But realizing that this is aimed for people who don't normally deal with amygdala, and adrenaline and having to think through adrenaline fueled thought cycles. Like, I could see how some people could get caught up in this.
Yeah, it's a highly addictive zone, and if people aren't like if they aren't aware of ways to kind of regulate um like how fast their thinking is going, if they're not used to dealing with anxiety in a healthy way, then they can end up in kind of a consumption cycle on this stuff.
Right.
Also, you mentioned like some people being more susceptible to this content. There's the idea of people becoming radicalized that has been kind of talked about a lot in the last decade or so, um, because of like content made by actual terrorists.
Right.
Um, and radicalization often involves being pushed into the amygdala.
Mm-hmm.
um it involves very reactive, looping, circuitous sort of thinking. Cult leaders
Mm.
often push people into that sort of mindset as well, and it makes it hard for people to make decisions on their own and truly think through things, or just stop and say, hey, let's pause before doing this.
Mm-hmm.
If they're in their amygdala, they're more driven to just go go go.
Right.
um and so like it's a very predatory space, I find, because people who want people to be in that mindset are usually not healthy people to begin with, and they're
Yeah.
usually not going to make money in a healthy way.
No. Which is
So
interesting
yeah.
because that's the other thing that not a lot of people talk about when it comes to conspiracy theories is how much it sort of connects with the gimmick scamming, like miracle worker, like snake oil
Well,
salesman type things.
that's very interesting because I was going to talk about where this stuff comes from, and it is actually very related. So if you want to read any of the pre 9/11 material, pick up a old copy of Fate magazine, and there's going to be a couple of conspiracy theories you recognize in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they keep on using the same ones over and over again. Like there's vaccine fear stuff that goes back decades and decades. Um, and like a lot of the people who push this sort of fear-based content, they're usually selling supplements. Like they're usually selling something like supplements that people don't really need, but someone's got a whole warehouse full of, and they need somebody to buy like a box of them. And so if somebody's already in their amygdala, they're not in a really good state to decide not to buy your supplements.
Right.
So this is a very like part of the reason why this content seems to be appealing to the lowest common denominator is because it's actually weeding out the logical people. It's weeding out people who are going to be distracted by the logical fallacies.
Right.
And it's trying to isolate the people who are more easily scammed. The
Gotcha.
person who's running it may not think of it that way, or they may not talk about it that way, but that's usually how it ends up being. Actual scam artists typically work the same way. They it's why the emails that they put out seem so ridiculous on the face of it. They're looking for the person who will buy something that ridiculous, who will believe something that ridiculous, because then they've already found someone who's more likely to buy the supplements than someone who like is thinking a lot more in their forebrain.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I've never really thought about it that way until like you started talking about being in the amygdala. And I was thinking of the ways that I've been hearing a lot about scams and stuff, especially since
Mm-hmm.
in our local area there has been a lot of counterfeiting going on with $50 and $100 bills. um
Ah.
and so the ways, like, I've been talking to some people at different places where they handle a lot of cash because I'm kind of curious, like, what's been going on. And apparently people are getting very aggressive about trying to get people to take their counterfeits.
Yep. Yeah, there's usually some way that they have of trying to get somebody to accept the bill and then leaving very quickly. And like it changes over time,
Hmm.
but I mean the community connects in a lot of ways. There's a lot of high pressure techniques that are taught to people who are like I've I've been really interested in the occult book space, and it's full of people who are basically selling the supplement version of books.
Right.
And like it gets very frustrating, um, like seeing more of the sales techniques focused on than
Hmm.
the actual content being focused on. Like with Fate magazine, I was very interested in Fate magazine because it's basically a monthly magazine about occultism and also like, UFOs, magic, just, the out there stuff.
Right.
It's been running since like the 40s, I think.
Hmm.
I've got copies of it from the 50s to the 80s.
Mm.
And like I was looking through them and realizing like I started looking at all the ads.
Hmm.
And the ads are all for just ridiculous crap. Like
Right.
it, it's the occultist version of sea monkeys.
Oh my goodness.
Um like it's there's collected there's books that are fairly ridiculous. There's a lot of public domain books being resold. Um,
Mm.
a lot of uh guides on how to use supplements to make yourself live forever.
Yeah.
Atlantean power rods.
Yeah.
Um, so like, and there's some interesting stuff too that I wish I could order now, especially at the price they're advertising it for, because it's like 60s prices.
Right.
Um, the dollar has definitely changed in value since then. But what I started noticing was like, hey, these articles, they're basically conspiracy theory posts.
Hmm.
They might, a lot of them might as well be, and in fact, I'm pretty sure that there are conspiracy theory posts out there that are just recycled Fate magazine articles. Um, there's occasionally interesting or useful stuff in a Fate magazine, but a lot of it is like the same content kind of on a cycle.
Hmm.
Like if you look at copies over the years, they're sort of using the same articles over and over again.
Mm.
They rely a lot on user submissions of I saw a UFO in my backyard. It was green.
Yeah.
Type of stuff, and like it's obvious that no one reading this magazine is expecting a lot of real stuff to happen
Right.
unless they've got some real problems.
Right.
It's actually kind of depressing in a way to see how much shysterism was in there, how much it was being paid for by basically supplements.
Right.
But the thing is, if you look into where the money is, because something has to be paid for, usually the money comes from a very boring place.
Mm. Interesting.
And usually the actual scam is very boring. Al Capone got busted for taxes.
Yeah.
He got busted by treasury agents for taxes.
Right.
And he went to prison for taxes. He didn't go to jail for anything exciting. It was like in terms of when they tell stories about Al Capone and the Treasury Department agents, they really pumped up the drama value of it for the radio shows that were
Mm-hmm.
out at the time. But usually crime is fairly boring,
Yeah.
and the distraction that is caused to cover it up is far more interesting and flamboyant. And so the crime, or just the seediness here, is like, hey, I really want to put you in a mindset where you buy this useless shit.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make some money, and I decided to make money by selling useless shit, and I want to pretend that's not what I'm doing. So, how do I get you to believe that's not what I'm doing? I'll cause a really big distraction. That's basically what a lot of these are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all to sell my pillow.
Oh my god.
That a lot of it was.
I didn't even think about that.
That's the supplements version of betting, I think. And it is as boring as, like, I mean, you wouldn't expect that the My Pillow guy would have been this involved in politics up to this point.
Yeah.
It sounds like a conspiracy theory to say that the My Pillow guy has been influencing politics.
Mm-hmm.
But he was, so he could sell more of his pillows.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's got a warehouse full of My Pillows, and he needs to sell them.
Yeah.
And like, it's amazing that there is basically an actual. I'm not sure if there's a conspiracy to sell My Pillows.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I don't. For a conspiracy to be present, people actually need to be trying to hide it, and he's
Mm-hmm.
very actively selling the pillow.
Right.
He was an actual
He
sponsor
was actually
of the
asking
networks.
people to buy his pillows so he could do his lawsuit, pay for his lawsuit stuff recently.
Yeah, and like he was kind of implying the more My Pillows you buy, the more that Donald Trump benefits.
Yeah.
And so like, but it's not conspiracy if he's doing it right in the open.
Yeah.
And so like, in a way, I think that the amygdala is way more interested in when people are trying to hide something, because if you think that someone is actually trying to hide something from you, that would actually activate your defense mechanisms.
Right.
So if someone's doing crime right in the open, it doesn't activate the amygdala because you're like, well, I can see it right there. It's boring crime.
You're doing it right there.
You're just doing it right there. So like, yeah, I think that a lot of conspiracy theories are written to activate the amygdala, and if you rewrite them in your mind to not do that, it will be a very good test of whether the conspiracy theory holds any weight.
Mm-hmm.
Because like a lot of the JFK stuff can come out um pretty amygdala sounding, but plenty of the data still shakes out once
Mm-hmm.
you get past like the idea that, you know, the government did something and it's like we don't know who in the government to trust. Oh no. Um but like yeah, there's been reports that the government did something. That happened.
Mm-hmm.
um Whereas like Jewish space laser that controls the weather. Um Now that one, I think a lot of people get interested in these because they just want to know how the hell someone came up with that in the first place.
Yeah.
And so it's actually some of these you basically find out the history of prejudice.
Mm.
Um it turns out that controlling the weather is a very common accusation against people who are being accused of being witches.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to control the weather has historically for like thousands of years been sort of the province of God. So if a person is purporting to control the weather, they're purporting to be have powers equivalent to or bigger than God's powers.
Gotcha.
um and so it's a common attack against someone that you're trying to burn at the stake for being a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, in fact, I think basically all people who are burned at the stake or otherwise like met a bad fate for being accused of being a witch had nothing to do with witchcraft.
Mm-hmm.
And we're definitely not controlling the weather.
Right.
Now, it's interesting to say that Jewish people in particular are controlling the weather because like they worship the Abrahamic God, who is a weather god.
Mm-hmm.
Like so, like the idea that they have a laser in space that can control the weather um is really weird when you consider the whole religion that they have.
Right.
um and so the idea that someone who is Jewish is controlling the weather, like being used to whip people up against them, that's been used for hundreds of years. But in the 1600s, they wouldn't have said that like you were using a space laser. They didn't have a concept of space laser at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have been stuff like witchcraft or devilry. It's but it's still basically a baseless accusation trying to discredit someone.
Right.
Um, and like, I think that one of the reasons why I really raise eyebrows at the anti-Semitism is because in researching, like, well, why are Jewish people accused so much of controlling the weather? I have found that actually Jewish people are accused so much of controlling the weather.
So weird.
It happens a lot. Like, part of the reason why they're accused so much of controlling the weather is that historically they have just been accused so much of controlling the weather.
Wow.
It's actually a real problem.
Weird.
There are bigger problems that are being caused by anti-Semitism, but yeah, extremely common anti-Semitic complaint is that Jews are controlling the weather, and I can tell you that no one is controlling this weather. This is weather that no one wants.
I wish someone could control this weather. Like, I'm sorry, but it went from like 40s to 90s. I don't like it.
Yeah, in our area particularly, the weather has been taking some big swerves that have been really hard to adjust to. It's been very tiring. Um and I I mean, so climate change is something that people talk about, and there are conspiracy theories associated with climate change. There are conspiracy theories that climate change is all made up by a political group for some reason. Um, and it's it really sucks because to people who believe that climate change is happening, it's very obvious that climate change is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like we've got one group of people who are freaking out really hard about something that isn't happening, and one group of people who are trying to get everybody to act at least half freaked out about something that actually is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's I guess the current state of affairs. It's not very fun to discuss conspiracy theories anymore
No.
because like politics is a damn mess.
And I'm really glad that we're just getting this out of the way as our first episode, because I I'm going to go a little bit meta right now. We have been involved in several podcast different types of podcasts, and I feel like the first few episodes are sort of like the dump stat. And so I'm so glad that we're just getting this out of the way to begin with. Like, look, we're going to be talking about shit like this.
Yeah, and like I'm always willing to talk about a specific conspiracy theory and break down what I know about it and look into it as well. But I have yet to find like a wacko thing that's really happening that we have some definite proof on that everyone would believe and would hold up in
Right.
court.
Because then it wouldn't be a conspiracy theory. Like, something about the unprovability of it. Or,
So sometimes the reason it wouldn't hold up in court is because of the weird vagaries of the legal system.
mm-hmm,
I will state it's like it's is sometimes I think the data is there, but it's kind of a matter of, well, who the heck presses the lawsuit?
mm-hmm,
How do you bump against this particular fence to test it?
right.
And like so sometimes it's just, well, that sucks. But quite a lot of it has been like someone trying to sell pills.
Yeah,
They're just trying to sell supplements.
so ridiculous. So, speaking of supplements that we're trying to sell.
Yeah. We also have ways of monetizing our work.
Oh man. Um
I've got these pills that'll make your liver bigger.
that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
Right.
We actually don't have like sponsors. So this is something like getting into something that's gonna probably just stay on the live cast. Um what do you feel about sponsors?
I kind of like not having a sponsor, and at the same time, I know that podcasts that have big sponsors have like a good budget to work with.
Yeah,
So, I particularly like sponsorships where it has something to do with what the podcast is actually about.
right.
I'm really annoyed by advertisements for Brilliant, MeUndies, Foodbox, uh like
VPN.
Babble, um I sleep on this mattress and I swear it's better. Um Here's
No,
why you
no,
should
no, no,
order
no, no,
your
no, no,
clothes in the
no, no.
mail.
No, don't discount. I go for a mattress sponsorship.
It won't be the mattress you like. I promise you. Um
Oh,
I just there was it Casper mattresses
something like that.
were that was the podcast mattress for a while, and I don't know whether they're good or bad, but like it's like, yeah, you're gonna tell me it's good because they're your sponsor.
So let's get into conspiracy theories, or like, basically scams that knighthood or lordship title place.
That was established titles.
Yes, that one was
Yeah, they were not in fact filing any paperwork whatsoever.
no. And I think they got in trouble with the UK.
They got in trouble with someone. I didn't look into this to the full extent that I might have been able to, but basically that was one of the ones. So yeah, there's been a lot of
Yeah,
like YouTube / podcast sponsors where it's like, I'm just tired of hearing about this one from about 40 different people and they
right.
all say the same thing.
Because they
Um
obviously have a script and have to say these words, and it's just easier to incorporate the words by using the default script.
Whereas I think Bad Occult Advice could probably just do fine uh via other means.
Yeah.
I mean, like, who would I want to sponsor Bad Occult Advice? Um Red Wheel Wiser Publishing,
Oh, wow.
maybe Llewellyn.
That would be
I'll have to
fun.
say good things about Silver Ravenwolf and her work.
Oh, no.
Uh,
Uh,
I'm totally joking. Like, I have no idea what I've never seen any book publishers in the occult space sponsor a podcast.
no. Like, I'm trying to think of anything that's been remotely occult that's had sponsors.
Using Amazon.com and its Prime program, you can order yourself 40 tarot decks in one day and have them tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean,
None of these sponsorships are real. I'm just describing,
I was like trying to
like, I
think
don't even know.
because you did get a set of tarot cards, and I'm like, did he get them on? No, that was eBay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, I forgot I got like
Yeah.
10 or 13 identical Rider-Waite-Smith tarot decks.
See,
Rider-Waite-Smith is in the public domain now, so anybody can publish it.
this is defining what bad occult is.
Yes. 13 different of the same Rider-Waite-Smith decks, each individually wrapped.
Yes.
When you just want that feeling of having a new deck.
Yes.
That's not why I did it, but like they were incredibly cheap.
Oh my god, like they were like $1 a deck or something. It was ridiculous.
Yeah,
and they were
they're
all
regular size, full color,
and they shuffle well. Like,
they're fine.
I mean, I don't know if we want to get into like personal life stuff, occult related. But we've recently become a original Rider-Waite only tarot household.
Like, not strictly, it's just that I'm trying to help teach Shadow the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and so it's like, well, the first step to learning a deck is to use that deck. He's
banned my cat decks.
I didn't ban them. They're right there. They're just right there.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to learn tarot to improve something I'm trying to write for fiction. Fan fiction specifically. And so it's just really funny to think about the fact that like we're a Rider-Waite-Smith only household. Simply so I learn tarot better.
In this house, we Rider-Waite-Smith.
Oh my.
Or get out.
Oh man, can you imagine redoing some of those like Christianized stuff where it's like this house is a King James only household.
Oh my god. I didn't know that's a thing that people had.
It is. Like,
See, that's to me that's like supplements for your wall.
yeah. So apparently, we need to come up with supplements for Bad Occulted
Oh
podcast
no,
listeners.
art prints are just supplements for the wall. I've been busted.
Oh man. But yeah, I think that'd be really funny. Rider
All
Waite
right,
Smith
so
only.
when it comes to the topic of conspiracy theories, I'm trying to think if there's anything left to say for this episode.
I
Um,
don't know. We're running up at right about 2 hours. So,
I'd say if you want a fun conspiracy theory that is not racism free, but I think is representative of a sprawling conspiracy theory, look up Time Cube. The website has been
oh,
archived. There's a Wikipedia article on it. Time Cube is very representative of a sprawling conspiracy theory by someone who obviously has something going on with his mind. Like
yes.
obviously has a thing going on. If you look up the history of the person who came up with Time Cube, you'll see that he was struggling with several challenges in his life.
Hmm.
Um,
And
so
like,
yeah,
we're not bringing this up to make fun of the person, but like,
no,
um,
and he's dead, so like, there's nothing you can say that will
another
harm him.
another thing that I'd like to bring up is that like, I mean, I'm just going to give my personal experience because I don't care if it's out there. Um, because of a natural gas leak, I literally became temporarily, I don't know, almost a hallucinatory schizophrenic.
I would say that you were in a very paranoid state.
And I was coming up with all sorts of conspiracy theories. Like, a lot of the stuff that I was saying and insisting at the time was really sounding like conspiracy theories.
Yep.
And
And they're also highly common for people who are under the influence of some sort of substance.
yes. And
So
so,
what you're saying is conspiracy theorists all have a gas leak in their house.
no,
Sorry.
no.
I know you're not actually saying that.
What I'm trying to say is that, like, we're not trying to bring this up to, like, be like, ooh, let's make fun of this person, but also, like, how to engage people who believe in these things is very important to know as well. Because, like, I was saying some crazy stuff, and if Felix was directly contradicting me, like, things got absolutely bonkers. But if you just sort of, like, went along with it until the episode was done with, like, it kind of helped um, me stay calm. And so, like, if you're talking to someone who actually is engaging in these sort of like conspiracy theory thinking, they live in their paranoia state. So, like, trying to like argue with them in a way sometimes cements it further.
So what happens is that if someone's kind of stuck in their amygdala
Mm-hmm.
and you argue with them, the argument becomes kind of like life and death feeling for them.
Right.
And they'll often become automatically defensive and automatically come up for reasons why they feel the way they do or they think the way they do, because the amygdala is literally capable of explaining away anything
Mm-hmm.
if it's going to keep you safe, which is the kind of the thought loop that gets stuck in
Right.
whenever someone's kind of stuck in their amygdala. Oh, and so I wanted to mention this. Uh, my therapist,
Mm-hmm.
let's just get really personal, actually mentioned, because I was talking about some of the gas leak stuff, he actually mentioned that it made a lot of sense how we were acting at the time and that we were very amygdala focused at the time.
Yeah.
And the reason it made sense, just a moment. The reason it made sense is because on some subconscious level, we were aware of the fact that we were in danger.
Right.
our mind was like our minds and bodies were on some level aware of the fact that our lives were in danger because the air we were breathing did not have enough oxygen in it.
No.
Because that's what natural gas does, is it displaces the oxygen that you need, and you actually have that to deal with as well as the methane exposure.
Right.
So the amygdala taking over makes sense because on some level your body is like, okay, this is starting to get life or death. I need something to get me out of this situation. And, every time the amygdala took over, we would end up kind of like
Outside for
moving
a
around a lot.
while. Out.
We'd either go outside for a while or we'd move around a lot. It would cause us to get out of the area that we were in,
Yes.
and we would breathe really hard,
Yes.
clearing the air out of our systems.
Now.
So the thing is, the amygdala is just trying to get you to do that.
Yeah. The
Which means
problem.
that if it takes getting you into an argument to make you
Yes.
do that, the amygdala does not care about the effects on your social group.
No. The amygdala is like, yeah. No, they're like, that's one of the things as well, is like when you're in your amygdala a lot, emotions are very heightened. And
Yes.
so it's very easy to just start like, I mean, I think back to some of the arguments that we were having in that house and just how ridiculous. And there were times where we'd stop and be like, why are we even arguing? This isn't black and white. This isn't like my choice versus your choice. It's like arguing, getting mad at each other for what type of restaurant we were going to order from. For an example,
I
just the
There
level
were
of
times where
seriousness.
I was asking myself, like, why do I care so much about this?
Right.
And it turned out that it wasn't the thing that was being talked about. It was simply that my body needed to have a reason to breathe harder.
Right.
And so, like, if somebody is really in their amygdala whenever they're thinking about something or hearing about something, it could be for all kinds of reasons. Like if you're in a bad household,
Mm-hmm.
if you just happen to have like a really high pressure job and you
Yeah.
listen to podcasts on the commute to and from that job, like if you're just in high pressure situations often, if you're a stock trader,
Yeah.
um like there's all kinds of reasons why people end up in that amygdala state, and there's all kinds of entertainment that's made to either
Mm-hmm.
take advantage of that state or to help you with that state.
Right. Like adrenaline junkies, they usually have a deficit of adrenal and they need to resort to those kind of things to feel that. It,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, like the fighter pilot types
Mm-hmm.
who have gone to, like, they've gone over 3 Gs a mile up in the air,
Mm-hmm.
and so they can't find a roller coaster that quite does it for them.
Right. Right. No, because like building a roller coaster like that, I believe is a one-way ticket type roller coaster. Cuz they have to have all those pressure suits and all that stuff in those jets just to make sure, comparatively the pressures don't do bad things.
Yep. Like, um so So basically, in closing,
In closing.
if you've been having trouble exploring the conspiracy theory space because of the reasons that I've outlined, well, now you might have a better understanding of why it is like that.
Mhm.
Do I think the conspiracy theory space will ever get any better? Um, I think that it really depends on where technology goes, and where regulation of social media goes, how that space is going to change, because a lot of these arguments and biases are shaped like the spaces that they're being had in and
Mhm.
the exploitation that can be made of those spaces.
Right.
Like, it's very easy for me to spot bots and paid trolls.
Mhm.
Um, if you see like about 100 people come in all talking about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that just happened out of nowhere.
Ooh.
Um, so um, this is a very difficult time technology wise
Yeah.
to predict anything.
Yeah.
So just uh mindfulness exercises help you get back into your forebrain.
Mm-hmm.
Centering, meditation, um, taking a nice walk outside.
Another thing that really helps as well, this sounds kind of weird, but like logic puzzles, things that require you to engage with things besides your emotions. I've seen some people say Sudoku really helps because it's like it's not very emotions based. It's just numbers.
Yeah, I do word puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
I do Quirtle and Octurtle,
Yeah. And
which
so
are variations on Wordle.
that's very helpful as well as like a regulating thing if you're deciding to like look into these things more. These are sort of things that like Felix and I have figured out to like help tamp down some of that amygdala engaging um stuff whenever we have to look into that. A good place to
Yeah.
sort of inoculate yourself as well is the SCP wiki. um, because that's basically built to be a whole conspiracy theory fictional universe.
Yeah, if you need a rabbit hole to go down, there's plenty of rabbit holes that are custom built specifically for this purpose
Yeah. So,
that do not sell supplements.
right, they don't, famously. But yeah, really looking into things that like if you do get anxious easily, sort of using it as a sort of exposure therapy, knowing that it's fake. So then uh you can kind of help yourself understand how those thoughts end up getting in your head. Like I've used it a lot because I'm really bad at like spiraling thoughts where everything starts getting worse and worse and worse. But reading something like SCP that's totally fictional just helps separate that from like this feels like it's happening to me to like no, it's definitely a story. So.
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. I also just want to say, as someone who's followed conspiracy theories since I was 11,
Mm-hmm.
um, like in 1993 is when the movie JFK came out, and then I think it might have come out in 92, but Congress acted on it in 1993,
Mm-hmm.
um, because of all the concern that came out. And the documents that were supposed to be declassified were supposed to all be declassified years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they are still not all declassified.
Right.
I have watched this happen since I was 11, and I am right now 42.
Right.
So if you get really into a conspiracy theory, I want you to understand I've watched 30 years go by, and we have not gotten to a conclusion yet on just that one. Don't expect anything to happen fast.
Mm-hmm.
That might help you kind of recenter into a more calm mindset. Like, because conspiracy theories often make you feel like you need to see if something's going to happen like tomorrow.
Right.
Um, and it's like something may happen tomorrow when it comes to the JFK stuff, but I guarantee you that not all the documents are going to be
Right.
by tomorrow, and probably not next year either. Like, once you really see just how slow some of these things can move, it kind of is its own calming force.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a bit of advice there. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have suggestions for like specific conspiracy theories or things that you'd like us to look into. For example, we do have some personal experience, like you brought up bots. We have some personal experience with the a little bit of bot stuff when it comes to NFTs and crypto. that we could maybe
Oh
talk
yeah.
about. You know, uh, also, like, one thing that I would like to get into a little bit more in a later episode, probably one where I would lead the discussion a bit more, is like cults and cult like behavior, because I've been in several.
I think that we could do several
Yeah,
episodes on cults because we've
yeah.
both got a lot of experience there.
Yeah. So, things like that are topics that we're going to be talking about. One thing that I also want to bring up, we'd probably move it towards the beginning in the actual edited, is that most of the stuff that we talk about, I mean, all the stuff that we talk about is going to be things that are usually unverifiable, you know, personal experience, personal anecdotes, because that's a lot of what conspiracy theories and like occult in general covers, are things where it's like, no, we don't have a scientific test for this.
It's like sometimes there will be scientific stuff, but occult literally means obscure,
Right.
and usually it's obscure for a reason.
So, don't ask us to like share our sources. Like, we're going to try to share as much as we can. Like, you've heard us a few times on the live cast. We've been looking things up, but a lot of this stuff is going to be anecdotal. So, I'll try, and I'm going to be the one editing it. And I will try to provide links to stuff if I can find it. But, you know,
I will say that citing sources is something that I want to do. Like, I want to just kind of keep adding to
hmm
as we go forward.
yeah,
And so like right now we're really in a better space to just do a discussion based podcast.
yeah,
When it comes to research based, that's something that I'd like to do further down the line.
yeah.
But yeah,
All
like
podcast.
if you ask in the comments, we could always give our best answer.
Ask in the comments. You can also send us a message on Tumblr. Badoccultadvice.tumblr.com is a great place. We're both, I mean, we're the only admins on it. So we get that, and either we'd respond there, bring it up in a video. Please be aware that we are not consistently on Tumblr right now, so answers might sit in the ask box for a while. We are not going to be recording these with any, like, we're not going to promise any kind of schedule for this right now. We're
2024 has been a real 2020 of a year for us.
Yes. We've got a lot of things going on that really preclude normal scheduling. Um, but we're starting to get into the place where we can start doing that stuff, uh, linearly. And so don't be surprised if we take a little while to get back to you, or if we give you like a text answer and then maybe 2 years later we might do a podcast on it. But I mean, that's just how our life is structured. Like, anyone who knows Vatical Advice has known that, like, we've been together married since 2020, so we're still getting schedules together after COVID. So yeah, but anything else you wanted to add at the end here?
Um, I'm trying to think. Um, to kind of shake out. Let's sort of do a just let's kind of relax. So I'm gonna start a chant.
Oh no.
Huna igna chawaneha.
Una
Huna
igna
igna
chawa
chawaneha.
neha. It's really hard for me to follow
Huna
you.
igna. This is
don't
bad audio.
don't change the tempo.
Yeah. So
That's mean.
um,
That's not a chant.
it was just this was all a bad idea. I'm
Yes.
sorry. This is a bad occult podcast.
To-
You have been casted to.
oh man. Yes. And now we're done. Are we?
Yeah, this is
You just
it.
went silent, so I had no idea if you had something else. Cool.
Oh, if I could drag this out further, I would. Oh,
Uh,
anyway, yeah, I'm done.
can I stop streaming now?
You can